Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to talk to you all about my notebooks and what happens on the inside of these notebooks and how they have helped me with my online creativity journey over the past few years. This video was inspired by Sarra of Heart Breathings, one of my favourite YouTube channels, and she has a series of videos about how to fill in your notebooks, and that's what got me thinking about the contents of my notebooks and how I could use them even more. After all, I do have a shelf of unused notebooks, as I'm sure many of you watching this have as well. So first of all, these are my Lamar Notebooks, and if you are familiar with my videos, you will have seen these before. So the first one I started with was a dotted one, and in here I basically just started to jot down content ideas, an idea about my e-course, general tasks. I did a week beginning of the 12th of March and started doing lists of tasks. I was writing down my to-do lists like this one in June, and quite honestly it felt a little bit overwhelming. I couldn't see exactly what I needed to do at a glance. So when I got my new notebook, which was this one, I started doing it slightly differently, and I attempted to get me a little bit more organised. Voila. So this is how I started doing it in September of 2018, and I started using a grid layout here, but I only did Monday, Wednesday and Friday because that was the days that I uploaded my blog posts. And now when I do it, I do every day of the week. As you can see on this side, I've started breaking up my projects and doing little lists underneath of blog posts. I've started the Patreon, I've written down my sponsored posts, I've written down what I want to do for my novel, and I did give myself a key at this stage, but I haven't continued with that. And then I would just fill in the blog post that I was going to write that month. So this is when I decided that I am just going to have one notebook to put all of my planning in. At the time I had about 5 different notebooks, and I thought I could have one by my bed, one in the car, one in my handbag, one on my desk, and just leave them there and just write in them whenever I felt I needed to write something down. This just didn't work for me because I knew I'd had an idea about something, but I'd lost where I'd actually written it, and I spent ages going through my notebooks looking for that particular piece of information. So I decided, right, that's it. I'm just going to have one notebook, and in here I did things like my novel outline, content ideas. This is when I first started thinking about my Patreon. What else have we got in here? And this is when I also started thinking about the book club as well, so I'd written down ideas there. This is even a sketch out of a video. And then I would also break up the month into weeks, so I would write down what I was going to do every day of the week. And then I've got my Patreon essay. Oh, I've even done it like that. I didn't do that more than once. I think that was before Christmas when there was a lot of days to fill in. I've got essay brainstorming, and I've got YouTube ideas and blog post ideas. So that is essentially how my planning went by the end of last year. And then in January of this year, started the new year with a new notebook, and foolishly I started it like this by doing my calendar in list format and breaking up with a key all the different things that I needed to do for my videos and for my blog. And as you can see, this went no further than January. It just wasn't a system that worked for me. And then this is more me. It's where I break up my projects in projects and in calendar format. And this is the best way that I work, and then I break it up into weeks as well. Or if I'm feeling really overwhelmed, I break it up into projects and write down the exact things I need to do for each project, just to make it a little less overwhelming in my head. And then we get to the latest, which is this one. So that's how I use my planning notebooks. I don't use this one anymore. This has now been not completely filled in, but I started this back in 2017. I think it was at the new year. And I had been reading what Tara Swigert had to say about planning and goal setting, and decided to do something similar for myself. Now, this was obviously 2 years ago, but I'm actually finding that a lot of the things I wrote down in here, I am still working on now. Some of the things I've discounted, and some of the things I've really started to hone in on. So it was a great way to start, but I should point out, I expected far too much of myself in 2017, in those first 3 months. So it started with some reflections and some goals. And then I had my 3-month goals here. What have we got? Brainstorm of goal ideas. Have a portfolio business consisting of my blog, my Instagram, my newsletter, magazine articles, chicken drawings, my non-fiction book, and other opportunities paid as yet unknown. In 3 months I will have a healthy business, writing and drawing, and will be making an income from it. This is what I am doing now, but I had got sidetracked with drawing because I started doing my chicken drawings on Instagram, and I thought I could make this into a business. Now, what I hadn't taken into account here was that there is only just me, and maybe this is something I can explore in the future, but for now I need to concentrate on my writing, and that's what I did over the next couple of years. However, this is me having another idea. This is to do with, these are Instagram ideas and making a calendar out of it, and this all was related to my mile markers, which I've set down here. And the first one was getting to 10,000 followers on Instagram. And I did that very quickly in that year. However, getting to 10,000 followers on Instagram was hard. And it took up a lot of my energy, and it took up a lot of my creativity. And it also made me focus on numbers, and I started to do all sorts of creative things with my notebooks and with my table, and I'll show you that later on with my notebooks. And maybe it was something I had to do to get through, to build up my confidence. So I can't say it was a bad thing, but it did mean that my writing got sidetracked. And talking of writing, my 4th milestone was to have 50,000 words of non-fiction written in that first quarter. And maybe I could have done if that was my only milestone, but I had 10 milestones. I don't know what I was, no, 12. What was I thinking? Anyway, the reason why I'm mentioning this is because I'm still working on this milestone, and this is now all mixed in with my Patreon, because my Patreon essays are my non-fiction, and which I want to put together and make a book out of. So I am still working on this. And as you can see, I've got other milestones in here. I've got other blog posts, and I broke down each idea. So some of the things in here I went with the non-fiction. I went with the Instagram for a while. What else have we got? I didn't go the drawing route. I didn't set up a page with Etsy. I didn't start pitching magazines. I didn't put advertising information on my blog because in 2017 the blog world started to change and everything started going to Instagram for advertising. I didn't build up my blog loving or my Twitter followers. Do you know, this is so strange looking through this, how off course I was with my writing. And it's only by looking back that you can see, well, I can see the journey I went on through doing this, but this all ground to a halt in kind of April, May, and it's because I wasn't doing what I wanted to do. I was doing stuff I thought I had to do. That's interesting. But it did start me off on looking at A Bookish Baker as a business. It's got me thinking. Okay, so this is a brand new journal. I started this after listening to Sarra on Heart Breathings. So there's only a few pages filled in, but I was just going to read out this first paragraph to you. Today I watched a video by Sarra on a channel called Heart Breathings. She was talking about notebooks and was challenging herself and others to write in her and our notebooks more, and I thought, yes, I should write in my notebooks more, because as I found the other day, free writing or the art of journaling actually creates ideas. Sarra talked about how she journaled her ideas for a course before she transferred these ideas into a specific notebook for her course, and she'd mapped it out into sections and modules, and it made so much logical sense, and she'd done that purely by writing it out. And I realised as I write this that with blog posts I try and make sense of my thoughts via writing. That's what my blog posts do. But with bigger projects like a course, I tend to try and keep it all inside my head before I commit anything to paper. Isn't that odd? Because how am I meant to make sense of it all in my head? I don't work like that. Writing helps me explore ideas, to gain ideas, and to make sense of everything. So already I had a light bulb moment on that fourth page of my new journal. These notebooks are slightly different because these are not so much planning ones but creative ones, and these notebooks have been amazing in terms of helping me write. So let me explain. First of all, this one, not so much, but this one has, in here we have my recipes, and I wrote these out purely for Instagram because I used to, and I still do, put a cake or bake as a picture. I will often put the recipe handwritten by the side of it. So I've got this plum compote here with an evil wasp next to it, and that was the day I got stung by a load of wasps, chased me up the field. That was a fun day. And then I've got this one, simple OT blackberry and apple crumble. So these ones helped me with my Instagram, and also it's given me an actual physical copy of my recipes rather than just having them all online. But these ones are where I started exploring my creativity in terms of doing different Instagram pictures, which I no longer do, but that's because I'm focused more on my writing. But these have also got my writing, where I have forced myself to write something creative purely to photograph it for Instagram. But by doing that, it has made me a better writer and a more confident writer. It's funny, isn't it, how Instagram can force you to do things but actually turns out to be a good thing. So this is just me writing down some thoughts, feelings and things like that. This was a hashtag for a sponsored campaign. This was something I cut out for, I don't know what that was. And then I've got lots more things here that I would draw or make scenes for Instagram. This little chicken bottom here, let's see if I can, that I made, as you do, and another one. And I think actually I put these on pieces of wire to make them stand up. I've got leaves, I've got a duck with proper duck feathers on here, and then I've got pieces of text that I've written. Age is just a number, that's quite timely, isn't it, to what I've been talking about lately. This here, I've just written what I was feeling. My feet are cold, and what I can see. So this is how Instagram, and this is going to be a whole other topic, but this is how Instagram has helped me with my writing. So what can I feel? My feet are cold, the sky is murky grey, that's what I can see. The patio is wet and the grass looks utterly exhausted. So this is in February last year, I think it was. Outside the chicken house door is dark brown, slippery, sticky and squelchy mud. The type that makes you sink a few inches when you stand on it, with muddy water shooting up either side of your wellies. So that's that book. And then we have this one, which actually I didn't like to use for Instagram because it was too big to fit. I was doing a square pictures then and it just didn't fit. But this is, see, it told you it doesn't fit. But this is one of my favourite pictures I did on Instagram. I think I did blossom on the tree that was going into the pie, because obviously this is an apple tree and the blossom was being turned into a pie. But that's the sort of thing I used to do in this notebook. And as you can see, I've got lots of trees. And I just used to write things down, things that I saw outside with the seasons. This notebook is similar. I really like going through this notebook. I mean, here, for example, I've just got a few hashtags. But then the first time I held her, and I just tried to describe how it felt holding a chicken for the first time. And again, the ground was dusty, so I tried to talk about where I was and what I could feel and see, and the sun warmed the goosebumps on my arm. And I think it's just about noticing the little details, and you just write them down as sentences and see how they flow together. Don't know what this is. Oh, this is when I had an idea of writing a book about my chickens, but it's actually turned into be a book about my online creativity. And this, again, I think this is all about chickens and how I related it to me, my pregnancy, depression, all that sort of thing. Oh look, there's an introduction here. Do you know, I think I made this into a blog post, because this says, let the river run, let all the dreamers wake the nation, come the New Jerusalem, which is Carly Simon's song that went with the film Working Girl, and I'm sure I wrote a blog post about Working Girl, and if I did, I will put it over here now. Then I've got all stories about chickens. My story, how have chickens healed me? And I've actually written about that and blogged about that. So this is when I first started really writing down some creative non-fiction. and he was basically just describing how I felt, what was going on in my head and what I could see. Look, with the moon high in the sky, the stillness only punctured by the pheasants. I brushed cobwebs from my face and made my way to the chickens. I'm not saying this is brilliant writing, but this, by writing down what I see and what I hear and what I feel, it has enabled me to gain confidence with my writing. And then by putting the writing on Instagram, I pushed through my fears. I hope all this makes sense. Pregnancy and chickens, my chicken story. Oh look, there's a structure here. This might be something I go back to at some stage. And then I start making little drawings. I mentioned this earlier, that I started having the drawings in, and then I got sidetracked by the drawings. I always get sidetracked by things. And here we have more trees I used to draw, and then I used to put leaves, the real leaves, on them. Thoughts on the dark. Now, did I make this into a blog post? As black as you're at. Something my dad says, as black as your hat, if we're a bit more BBC English, but in Derbyshire it's as black as your hat, and that's how it is around here when there's no moon, no stars, and there's no street lamps where we live, and it's just very dark. Little duck. Nature as a healer. Over 100 trees, over 100 trees. December. Experimenting with paints. I think I prefer crayons. But at the same time, can you see how I always put some text with it? And this was literally what I could see, because I've written it. I can see the last few golden crab apples from where I'm sitting in the kitchen, weakening their grip, blah blah blah. And then no wild birds allowed. This was when we had to keep our birds, our chickens, separate from the wild birds. Another tree, mud. And I started writing about that. And then what have we got here? And then this one, I'm going to put the photo, the Instagram photo, over the top. The day breaks, a muted crow from the cockerel, breath chuffing like a steam train, frost so heavy the ice is over an inch thick, a solitary leaf on a silver birch, smothered in miniature icicles, crunchy water in the stream. I went outside and I just thought, I'm going to describe what I can see. Eggs, snowdrops, another chicken, and that's that notebook. And I used that for Instagram, and it forced me to write and it forced me to create. And then in this one, it's a similar sort of thing, but this one didn't actually like the texture of the paper. It was a smoother paper, and I preferred to write on the other one. We've got little chickens at the bottom of the trees. A windy day. November. Snowy December. Mr. Blackbird's larder. So I had a question in my Instagram DMs last night from Nikki, and she said, do you have any tips on how to get better as a writer, as a creative writer? Well, this is my biggest tip, is to force yourself to write little paragraphs of the day, what's happening outside, just describing what the weather's doing, what you can see on the trees, what you can see, even things like the way the clouds are scurrying along. And actually, looking out the window now, they remind me of a big cruise ship, just because they're giant clouds, but they're moving at a real pace. So that might be how I would do it if I was writing something now. But that is my biggest tip in terms of getting better as a writer, in terms of becoming more confident, and just put it out there, put it on Instagram, then move on to the next one and get better, then move on to the next one, build up your confidence. So this is my notebooks from the past few years, and it's been a mixture of creative notebooks, which is what these ones are. So they're my creative ones, a recipe one, and then creative writing and just some sketches. I know I'm not very good at drawing, but it helped me at the time. It helped me call myself a creative, I think, rather than just a writer. And then we've got my journal one, and I know I've got more journal ones somewhere, and maybe that's for another video. I've got my starting to see myself as a business, and then I've got my planning notebooks. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up, and if you like what I do, please do subscribe to my channel. It makes all the difference, especially to a new channel such as me, trying to be seen out there in this online world. Oh, finally, I forgot to mention this notebook. This is where I write my scripts for my YouTube videos, and I didn't follow it at all. I stuck to the structure of it, but in terms of the script, I didn't stick to it at all. But it helped writing it to start with, and this is a Leuchtturm notebook. So this is another one that helps me with my online creativity. And that's the end of the video. Thank you very much for watching, and don't forget to subscribe. Bye.